Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is December 2023. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Also want to thank Akiba Zamchek for introducing me to today's guest, Adam Mirza. Correct?
Bravo, bravo. Perfect.
Where are you calling in from, Adam?
I am in Stone Mountain, Georgia. So a little bit outside of Atlanta, the east of just outside the perimeter.
First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Oh wow. Yeah. A lot of good classics we could go with instinct was something about life and love. But yeah, I think I'd go from those and go forward.
Good.
Yeah.
What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Well, in terms of media consumption, which is, I know, not the only way you could take that. These days it's YouTube. I really spend a lot of time listening to YouTube and sometimes watching it. Um, I think, I mean, there's, a lot when we use the word information, that word has meant a lot in the 20th century and in the 21st century. And for me, these days, it's hard to think about that without thinking about it in relation to media.
Yeah. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
To understand the world, to probably certain fantasies of control, of how we see ourselves in the world and how we articulate ourselves in the world. I think we use information as as almost intellectual objects that we can construct the world, that allow us to construct the world.
Good listening, and you're a wordsmith. Thank you, Adam. So, do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
I think it's part of our human condition, which it's a title of this book by Hannah Arendt, who's a big influence on me, the German Jewish philosopher, political theorist. But is it in the human condition? And she just defined that as that we are conditioned by what's outside of us.
Yeah.
So we're not just ourselves, but we're always enmeshed in the world and other people, and we don't have control. We don't have full control over those. So I think the need is, so in that sense, it's fundamental to that situation. But I think it's not. It's very much conditioned and cultivated and a product of history and a function of history and time and space.
Yeah, did she use the word context and environment?
She studied with Heidegger, who had this notion of like the world, which was, and your being in the world, which, he had the concept of environment. I think for her, the key term was a political term. She interpreted in a political context in the sense of the public, being in the public. So
she put it in humans, not inventions. Did Heidegger put it more in inventions or both?
I think more. Yeah, I mean, in my knowledge of Heidegger, the tool or the nature of how we kind of engage the world in this kind of immediate way, and how we kind of build out from that. At least, at some parts of of his theories. Whereas for her, I think we're immediately in this context that is of other people.
Really heavy. Adam, we're going to get into this soon. A few more questions before we do, but I have to say it now. McLuhan said, technology is the most human thing. So he kind of combined them both, because
Yeah.
he was saying, yeah, when we invent a pen, it is an
Yeah.
extension of human. It is the extension of the public.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
mean,
if these guys say, well, no, they go, well, it's called technological determinism. It says, what it is, it's like the radio, well, the telegraph caused the Civil War,
mhm.
not this issue, but the technology. I mean, what caused where we're now? Tweets. But then go, no, it's humans using tweets. So, anyways, we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
Let's go through these at first.
Right.
Do thoughts create emotions?
I think, we experience we encounter the world where we have experiences, and we through those experiences we have feelings and thoughts that are all enmeshed in
Yeah.
the way we're in that world and what we're doing in the world. I feel like I'm sounding very Heideggerian now. So, so yeah, so I think the doing, and yeah, I think we're probably just gonna get into this, but that was a big movement, I think, in that some of that philosophy, and certainly Arendt, of shifting from thinking to doing and action. So if we're talking about thoughts, if we privilege thoughts and thinking, that's not to that could lead us a little blind to realize that it's so enmeshed in that action of doing, and encountering the world, where the thoughts they're all tied up with that. So yeah.
Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
I was gonna say do it, since that's where I'm thinking right now.
It's good. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Yeah.
But I do get that answer a lot, that it's like doing it until I experience it, until it's actually
in the world.
Yeah, in the world. Good. Can humans think without language?
I would say language is a very rich way to articulate our thinking, and it depends if we're if we're going to talk more about feeling and intuition. I think that happens all the time without language, but I mean, they're all enmeshed. They all turn into each other. So
yeah, Chomsky says a language is not just words; it's a culture, a tradition, unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Man. Wow. Yeah. Well, we think about miscommunications. Of course, it feels just inevitable that language, it always either breaks down or is incomplete or is not, you don't have the right words all the time. So I think we're always one answer is you invent new language.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. My friend, I said to him, he said something in a half sentence.
Yeah.
I says, Americans are always using half sentences. It's like, he goes, deal with it. And it was such a great way to respond to me. It's like, yeah, so what? Deal with it. Again, this is stupid question, but your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I more feeling. If I had to pick one, I think that, yeah, I think we respond so strongly to our feeling, and the feeling are so uncontrollable and also controllable.
Yeah.
So I think that's, if I had to pick one, I'd go.
Yeah. It's interesting because we invented the words feeling and thinking, so we
Yeah.
think we can separate them. And like you sort of insinuated earlier on, you can't separate them. They're so intermeshed, you can't say it. But 80 to 90% of people say we're more feeling beings, and this is how they say it. I
Well,
think,
yeah,
I
go ahead.
think they go, I think we're more feeling beings. They
Yeah,
literally say
well,
it.
that's what I think that the thinking is a conscious act of reflection. And
Yeah.
so if we kind of take ourselves away from that and just immediate, then we're feeling.
Yeah.
But when we think, we're engaging, we're it's a conscious act or semi-conscious, but it's an act of reflection.
Yeah, that's Bridget Bardot says, I don't think when I make love. I'm like, good luck. How do you shut your brain off? But your body's doing a most sensual thing. It's like people who meditate, they go, now think about not thinking. Two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
I'd say no. Short
Yeah.
answer. I'd have to unpack soul a lot. Yeah.
Second one, can machines think?
Um, yeah, so if we think in some ways, based on my last answer, I feel like I have to say yes, but I want to say no.
I love it. I want to say no. That's good.
We'll figure it out by the end.
Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Happiness.
Yeah. But I got it from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He says happiness doesn't tend to last, meaning does.
Yeah, I think that's a shortcoming on my end.
Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
I would say creating it, and the detecting it is, yeah, that's that act of reflection when we stop and try to listen to what we're thinking.
Yeah.
So I think both. I get it, but I'd say fundamentally, I guess it's creating it. Not super confident on my responses here.
Don't worry, dude. It's just fun. It's actually impulse. First thought, best thought. I'm not holding you to it, but that's funny because there's a bumper sticker on a car in my street. It says, "Don't believe everything you think."
Yeah, but then all these are slogans, right?
Right.
So we get back to media and
What's
thinking.
Yeah, and thinking. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I think speed of light.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Yvonne Rainer responded, said, "You can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?"
Ooh, maybe it's well, I think first we have to learn the tools because that we already are using all the time, and because so many of our tools are pre-made for us, so we don't even know. I'm thinking, as in terms of whether I'm teaching, it's audio software and it's a digital audio workstation, and until you unpack how that tool works, you don't know what it is. So you're not even aware that the tool is using you as much as you're using the tool. So I think in a broader, and then you could apply that in the broadest way to our, like our food consumption and how our food is made and all that. So I think it's the tools we have. We have the tools. We just have to take the time to try to learn them.
It's great. What new toy do you suggest?
Yeah, I think it's like whatever's right in front of you.
Yeah, it's good. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Oh, wow. where wow, I get it probably changes a little bit every night, every month, every decade. It feels it changes day by day and at the same time every month by month. So yeah, it's a hot mess. Yeah.
McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the
Yeah.
hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions.
Yeah.
So, Adam, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
It's much easier to ignore
Yeah.
them. We can just live with them. We can just enjoy them without thinking about them, without experiencing them in a richer way. So I think so. There's a lot of our feeling and our thinking that we can just experience. That's already pre-made for us in a sense.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do artists have moral obligation?
I'm I think humans have moral obligations, and artists so artists certainly have moral obligations. How that relates to the art they make, I think, is some places it's simple in that the same obligations always are follow or are always present, but in terms of what that art is made, I think it's much more complicated.
Yep. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Oh, and yeah, and the repackaging of old ideas. I feel like I just kind of experienced the new idea. I'm not the new ideas, and they're it's just there's this this mid-40s reflections, this ongoing every day. There's something there's new headlines, there's new things emerge. I'm not. I don't feel like I'm at the front, like say as an artist working with all the newest technologies. That's not something I try to do. Maybe it goes back to that earlier question. I'm trying to still just slow down and unpack them. The new ideas, yeah, yeah. I certainly things are different, and there are new ideas because we have new situations. We've invented new language to address those situations. So I don't think I'm afraid, but it's one more. In some ways, they're exciting. We're experiencing this ongoing. I mean, just to go a little further, you think just where we've been in 2 years, last 2 years, the last 4 years, the last 6 years, and all the kind of changes that we've gone through, which are scary at some level, and another level they're just simply the world, yeah, that we're in. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Very vaguely, and yeah, maybe some, I can't remember, 4 years old, very vague impressions of, and it has a kind of dated photograph, kind of late 70s, early 80s kind of color vibe, kind of warm, washed out color vibe. I was in Texas I was born in Atlanta, but then in San Antonio. So maybe it's a little bit of the colors of the South Texas.
That's funny because it's usually a visual that most people have a visual memory. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Got to be a blessing, because without memory, we have no responsibility, no reflection, and also it's memory for me is completely tied with imagination. So the possibility of imagining new futures is tied to our relationship to our memories.
I like that a lot. That was good. So tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Wow. Trying to think who to start with, outside or inside. I Yeah, I guess I could go with, wow, there's just so many ideas. I'll start with outside, and I'll say pick an old friend of mine, Michael Ibrahim, who's a saxophonist, a classical saxophonist, and now is a administrator. And he, I think, one of the ways you learn as a musician is being physically in the presence of another musician, and just the way he played and the way he engaged his instrument kind of calmed a lot of my fears or ideas about what was important in music. So that's one. Man, in my family, I have to put, I feel like I have to go with both my parents. I'm sorry, I can't.
That's fine. What did you mainly get from your mom, and what did you mainly get from your dad?
Yeah. So from my mom, I would say just a sense of basic decency and connection to, and interest in the being with other people in an emotional and social way. And then from my dad, I would say a certain steadfastness and integrity and resolve.
Yeah, it's good. Did they raise you a particular religion?
Not so my dad is from was born in Pakistan, well, actually born in India 2 years before partition, and then moved to he was in the Punjab region, which was where the Muslims in what became India had to go over to the Pakistani side, and the Hindu who were in Pakistani side had to go over to India. So he was raised in Islam, but came to the U.S. in the 60s. My mom is from Boston area, from Marblehead. We went to Unitarian church growing up, and I remember feeling somehow at an age of like 10, like a militant, or like 8, 7, militant atheist. I remember thinking, this is so wrong. I can't believe I have to go to church, not realizing how sort of loose and very non-dogmatic the church was. I remember doing an exercise in the backyard of the kids, where we were digging up in the sand. It was like bones. We were like studying evolution. So that was the kind of vibe. So that was, we went there, I'd say, mostly for social reasons. And yeah, that was about, but I haven't been involved with organized religion really since then.
Do you pray?
No.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Yeah, great job. I don't know.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think evil people exist. I think it's a capacity of all of us, and when if it consumes you, then that's when you become an evil person, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, the real hidden question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the Mob and the Samurai, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, Adam, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I don't. I think naming something that's challenging is helpful, and it helps you understand it. I feel like personally, my own struggles in this area have, by naming it, has helped me find a way to rationalize it and make a narrative that allows me to kind of live with it, the situation, or address it.
Well, that's funny because skateboarding philosopher in Venice told me when I asked him that question, he says the word name is me. Isn't that heavy? It's in words evoke more than their meaning.
Yeah, I think when we make names, we use names, they get this symbolic weight, which I think for a long time I feel like I avoid naming. You want to keep things open. So and naming and defining felt like you're restricting something. However, I think articulating the challenge is to find the right name at the right time for the right situation, or the right word, and then I think it can be helpful. So yeah, so I think
at our Carl Jung meeting the other day, it was amazing. This woman said, well, you studied the shadow self in Jung. And she said, hey, I knew I had some like bad habits or whatever. Had problems. I had to name myself the bad this, or not the bad, whatever. Like, and so when that bad half of her took over, she could get more in touch with it by naming it. And that's sort of funny because it's like, Watts is sort of implying, and it's out of context, like if you name it, then you've created it. But it's also, no, maybe if you name it, like some people say, if you don't acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yeah. I think there's a lot here. I mean, I also, thinking of Arendt has this line in this beautiful video interview of her that's really, really wonderful. You find it on YouTube, where she at one point is asked about her religion and coming and fleeing Germany in World War II, and she says, if you are attacked as a Jew, you should defend yourself as a Jew. Or if I am attacked as a Jew, I will defend myself as a Jew. So I think even on the other side, in our own identity labels, which are also equally very problematic because they reduce us, but they are still the manner in which we have to navigate the world sometimes. So that those labels are part of the world. So
That's
so
good. Adam, you're really concise and articulate. I appreciate it. I'm learning a lot, but I'm curious your thought on this. Both Krishnamurti and McLuhan said violence is the human search for identity.
Ooh.
What do you think of that, especially in your study of Hannah? What would she say to that?
Well, I don't think she would. Well, that's complicated. She does write about revolution. I think that what she would say, there are, I think she would make some kind of argument about civilization does tend to emerge out of violence. So certain political and community. Maybe I'll just leave it at that in the broadest sense, historically at least. And it's hard, as much as we try to find a way to eliminate all violence. It seems it often comes up in those contexts. I think I was originally taking your question in kind of a personal way and thinking more of like my own, like, to what extent do I have instincts for destruction, or and those, I think they can reveal certain dimensions of our psyche that could be important to our identities. But and I guess one other way to think about it is maybe not violence as in destroying objects or bodies, but maybe a softer way is in terms of our going into our encounters with other people. What not violence, but what do we put upon other people? What are we forced to confront that can be terrifying in our interactions with other people, that can shame us or can confuse us? Those can be very identity forming, and for bad or potentially for learning.
Was she known as a pacifist? Was she?
No,
She wasn't anti-war.
no.
Because
So
the other was Maria Gimbutas. She's an anthropologist who kind of tried to prove that humans are not innate to be violent. And everybody goes, that's what we all go, well, there's wars are justified because, I started this new question, which is horrible. I don't want to ask it, but is killing or murder ever justified?
I want to say no.
That's good.
I think I'm not, and I think I am, unlikely to be in a situation where I'll have to answer that. So it's almost unfair of me to answer it.
Yeah. But no, that's the answer I want to hear you say. I don't want to hear people say yes, because they do. They go, yeah, if someone, no. I mean, me and this other guy are both pacifists, and they go, yeah, we say no. And then they go, yeah, you're about to be killed. And you know it, and your mom's in front of you and they're about to kill your mom. You're not going to do anything. Kick him in the knees or whatever. But, so this is sort of flushes it out a little more. Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Then my friend said, well, villains don't think they're bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson said, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, wow, I did something morally and socially wrong? So there's a lot of prompts there, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
Going back to my fascination with YouTube, one of the areas on YouTube I spent about a year ago, I was watching a lot, were videos by former inmates, and it's a whole genre, and talking about what's life like in prison. Does this really happen? Does this really happen? These are people who've been in prison for 15, 20 years, and like punishment, does punishment work? I think at some level it definitely has an effect on people, and so I think in the case of some of the people I saw online who would talk about how at the age they went into prison, they were very violent, they were very aggressive, and they needed 15 years. I mean, I don't think they wanted to be in jail for 15 years, prison for 15 years, but they recognized that they're very different, and there was like a rigor that was put upon them. But you've got to imagine there's a better way. There's another way. So,
but did they say, yeah, I kind of chilled out from it, or it just varied?
I think they got older, and so the system, the way people can get into the system at young ages here. So
it did shape them, because, I asked this guy down on the boardwalk in Venice once, he'd been in jail like 3/4 of his life. I says, is the jail all HBO, drug of your choice, and cell phones? And he goes, yeah, a lot of times.
Yeah.
And then the Enron movie, Most Dangerous Man in the Room. I went up to the producer and I says, dude, because they go to country club jails. So what? I go, your film is just a training film for up and coming capitalists. Or no, I didn't say it that. I said, is your film kind of like a training film for up and coming capitalists? And he goes, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
And he was trying to make a statement like, if you do this in capitalism, you're going to get more than a hand slap. It's like, yeah, right.
God. Yeah, and I don't want to be suggesting that our criminal justice system is doing a good job of producing. I mean, for every person who survives and has got, I don't know, who has found a new life afterwards, there's many who just never leave the system. So
James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
This is great. I mean, and this gets to the area that I'm really interested in, of just this real, virtual, and the relationship between both of them. And and actually, even to bring up Arendt again, she modeled her notions of action sometimes in a relationship to like theater. And what is the difference between, if you grab someone and shake them by their clothes in real life versus if you do that on stage, the act, like the mimetic, this acting as if it's real. And the other point, the other example I want to just bring up, thinking about is the German a filmmaker. I went to Antarctica not to see the
Herzog.
Herzog, not to see the penguins, but to see the people who study the penguins. Why do they go there? Why were they? So he did these fiction films like Fitzcarraldo that were almost real life documentaries. They actually pushed a ship over the mountain. And then he does these documentaries like The Encounters at the End of the World that are documentaries, but are kind of about the mystery and about the fiction. So I think we are suffused in our own thinking in these imagery narratives, or in the meaning we give to the spaces around us. So we're always in some degree of fiction. I think that the fiction we encounter as fiction is flavored always by its medium. So there is a difference between, being in a space. Although then we get to theater, and what does it take to be in the same space and just change it so all the objective features are mathematically exactly the same, but in one instance it's real life, in the other instance it's not. So clearly the two go on, but there is some flipping. And the fiction certainly allows us to heighten or probe or reflect on or embellish or articulate or make more clear or spend more time on things that might get passed by in real life.
Brought up a lot there, Adam, because Herzog indeed is known to pay the people in his docs to do things specifically in that, like most documentarians, you don't pay them to do that. You let them do it in your documentary, because the difference, cinema verite and cinema, it's called direct cinema. It's like fly in the soup or fly on the wall. Herzog isn't observational cinema so much. He's more fly in the soup. He's not fly in the wall. But all the power to him, because then you go to the greatest political doc of all time, Battle of Algiers. It's a fiction film, supposedly. Dude, it's a documentary. Everybody in it fought in the war except one guy is an actor. And that's why George Bush used it as a training film, and the Black Panthers use it as a training film. And they asked Gilo, what does your film teach people? And he goes, how to make films.
That sounds like an honest answer.
Yeah, but it is an important film. It's still being used by revolutionaries and dictators to how do you deal with the uprising. So it's like a training film, but it's called a fiction film. So what first attracted you to pursuing music? So what's your tipping point? Like you what are you studying in high school and college, and then where you go, oh, that's the career I want. That's my calling.
Yeah, well, all right. The quick outline is in fourth grade, they one day in class, they came in with a cart full of different instruments, and they asked everyone, hey, try these out. And I went and I played these instruments, and there was a flute and there's a violin. I kept going back and forth, and I picked violin, and I kind of thought everyone's going to pick an instrument. And at the end of the class, only like one or two of us had actually had any interest. So I went to start taking music classes. So that's how I started on violin. And music was just part of the life alongside other activities, sports and whatever else, video games. And it wasn't, I went to a liberal arts school, and I didn't go to music school. I was a decent violinist, not exceptional. But it was really my junior year abroad. So first of all, I had to declare a major before going abroad. And I had just taken, in bouncing around from pre-med to econ to political science to philosophy, the only thing I'd taken every semester was music. So that was the only thing I could major in by the time I went to study abroad. And then I went to Paris, and I was, full immersion, living in Paris for a whole year, and just breathing the life of being a young person. First time out from Atlanta, from the suburbs of Atlanta to this deeply artistic city, and I just kind of fell in love with the idea of being an artist a little bit. And when I came back to Williams for my undergrad, I felt like, okay, I know what I want to do. I remember thinking I need to do something artistic and intellectual. And that's sort of what got me into composition. So I kind of came back into music, which I'd been doing all the time, but through composing, which was a way to be, I think I thought of myself creative and intellectual. And at the time I was also thinking a little bit about philosophy, which I don't think would have been a good fit for me as a career. But what I realized is I really like events. I really like putting on events where stuff happens. And where you imagine an idea, like you look around your space and you think, what kind of interesting event could I put on here that could open some people's eyes or minds? So getting involved in concerts. So being a composer and getting into that world just kind of flowed out of that.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I'm a put on artist who puts on events. So when you use the word, I like to put on events, it's like it adds double meaning there, put on. And so do you think this artistic and intellectual blending is in your DNA? Did it come from your parents? I know it's both, but is there a little slant? Did you think you got it a little more in your DNA or a little more on your own pursuits?
Yeah,
your own calling.
It's interesting. Like even as now as I'm at the stage where a lot of my friends have children, and it's like, from what I see and what I hear, like a lot of their personality seems like pretty much not set, but there's a lot of core parts that they're pretty consistent from an early age. And I think there was a certain kind of questioning and this kind of like intellectual interest, like from a very early age. So in the creative side, maybe a sense of play, I think, was always really important to me, and dynamics between people. So I I would put it a little more on the innate in that sense.
What's your mom and dad's careers?
So my mom was a college librarian. So originally interested in children's publishing, but then spent most of her career at community college library in Atlanta. And my dad he worked for Coke for a long time in marketing. That's how we came to Atlanta. And but he left the corporate life and became an entrepreneur. And it's interesting. It's like these days he does all these kinds of consulting projects with small local companies. And one of the things I realized in New York, I mean, this is a term people talk about in the arts these days, is arts entrepreneurship. As this idea. And basically the kind of concept as it comes up in like conservatories is like conservatories train these musicians, so let's say be in an orchestra, but 95% of them, let's say, will not get a job in a professional orchestra. So then you have this question, well, okay, they're doing it for the passion. They know it's a risk. They may not make it. That's what it's like being in the arts. Okay, but are there other ways they could use their artistic skills? And, and there have been, and this is in the kind of new music culture, contemporary classical culture I was really a part of and into in New York. It was a lot of this formation of these young groups at a conservatory that didn't want to be in the orchestra and they wanted to start bands, of new music. So I have a connection with this connects my dad. I felt about his, this spirit of entrepreneurship. I used to go with him when he started a distributing double cola franchise in Atlanta. I remember going with him around town to different stores, and we'd taste test. Here's Coke, here's double cola. Which do you like better, blind? And the energy he had meeting people and engaging with people. He loves working with people and trying to solve problems and help creative people start their businesses. So
that's cool. Yeah, that's what you described there was Kronos Quartet. They were like, that's like, come on, they turned into this is amazing. So screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. When you're composing a piece, an atom piece, not for commission per se, but you're composing a piece or atom, what role does intention play in your creative process?
Yeah, well, so maybe going back to those first examples, I feel like I would try to square them in that, because like Kubrick's films, they feel really, in some ways, very crafted and very articulate, although in other ways they're kind of ambiguous and often. So I think intention, if it means, do I get the message that the artist put out? No, I think that there's no one message. We're creating hopefully complex, rich art objects that are fascinating and bewildering and exciting. But maybe at a level of craft, there could be a notion of intention, of articulation, of timing, positioning, chiseling, framing. So that's how I try to square those first two. So I think in my own process tends to be very, very, very messy. I tend to get excited by some idea, which is usually new idea. So I don't tend to stick around on the same kinds of domains. So that could be, like putting some violins in a gallery and making them make sound. And then it's like, how do you sometimes so a lot of times it's trying to get into a situation that I intuitively find kind of interesting and there's something there and trying to then work with it. I mean, I feel like the best cases usually all of that, there's an integrity to that whole process. Sometimes I flounder around a lot. Yeah. Sometimes the floundering eventually turns into something, but it's a lot of going into a direction and working with it and trying to find the intention.
Yeah, that's good, Adam. Really well done. And Duchamp said, "There's no art without an audience." How much are you thinking of your listener when you're composing your piece?
Yeah, I think that's also changed me a little bit. Sometimes especially when I was really into rent and thinking about the public, I would write pieces deliberately imagining not how the audience would listen to them, but like, yeah, a space, a situation. So I remember doing a chamber piece, and I remember it was me on a concert with large, like 10, 15 musicians, and I did a piece of just 3 musicians, and I wanted it to feel really isolated. And so I remember as I was writing it, having this context of imagining, knowing where it was going to be played, kind of who the audience would be, and trying to mess with that idea. I think, yeah, these days, maybe it's because I'm now, it's like I don't know who my audience is. I think there were times in New York where I was in a scene. So I could imagine the people who might be at a show, which actually I kind of liked. That gave me something to work with. Now, that's like the weird, it's like, who's our audience in the remote, where who's watching now, who's going to watch in 100 years, or
Yeah.
So I think it's hard for me to know who I'm writing for or creating for now. Yeah. So in some ways it's become a little more maybe, I don't know, internal or just different.
McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. Knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter in a camera or a projector might be an extension of our eyelid. Even non-tangible like philosophy and religion might be an extension of consciousness. What does the violin extend for you? What humanness?
Yeah. These days it's maybe my gestural energy.
Gestural energy is a good answer, dude. Yeah. And then what does the pen or pencil or keyboard, when you're writing your composition, I imagine you write compositions with either a keyboard or a pencil or a pen.
Yeah.
What does that writing utensil extend for you? What humanness?
More on the information side. I more on the map. Yeah, it's the cartography, the formalizing, the communicating. It's something I struggle a lot with, the notation, especially as I've been doing more improvised works or semi-improvised. So it's not, I think I'll keep talking about Arendt, but she had.
Please don't hesitate. I love that.
Well, because this was, a question. So one of my friends, an artist, once asked me, like, you need to understand, like, what is a score? Like, why do you have scores? Like, what does a score mean to you? Why do classical musicians, let's say, or composers, use scores? Why do you need a score? And I found a little bit of an answer that I liked in her analysis of the U.S. Constitution on revolution, and part of it was the idea that a document it's not a text. A constitution is not a recipe for creating a lasting, public government, social structure and political structure. And she actually points to, I think she might actually mention Pakistan's constitution, and she says, as evidenced by the fact that the U.S. Constitution was the model for constitutions in several other countries in the 20th century, and following those instructions did not necessarily produce stable governments. And so for her, what the Constitution was a memorialization of a set of principles that a community had made, and it's an exclusive community. Let's not be clear about that. But within that community, it was a memorialization of a certain set of principles. And, and performance was part of that. And she, not the Constitution, but she pointed to, John Hancock's famous signature on the Declaration of Independence as an action of writing that's also a performance. Just this fuck you, this big, like, and a treasonous document. I mean, signing your death warrant, with, so writing, so a score to me at the best in writing should be a way to like coalesce a set of principles of how musicians can come together and interact with each other.
Yeah.
And so and create a kind of ensemble community in reference to this kind of document, which doesn't need to be followed religiously, but it's like something to engage with.
Yeah.
So.
It's good. Really good there, dude. You're teaching me a lot. So what's the function of music?
To breathe with other people.
That is a great, Akiva's dad, Norman Zamchek, said, to keep people from going insane. But I love that, to breathe together. That is really, really great answer. Copeland said the 4 ingredients of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. How do you integrate? What do you focus on one or the other? I know it's a general, but is there something you kind of lean towards, or you integrate your integration system of the 4? Any thoughts on the 4, the breakdown?
Yeah, I feel like I generally do not think of those very consciously.
Yeah.
In most cases in my music, they come up, but I tend to think more of gestures and actions.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I scrape a note on the violin, like what's the pitch? Okay, there'll be a timing, there'll be rhythm potentially, but maybe the way it's done each time, it's like distortion pedal. It's like it's always gonna break up a different way. So I can't. Yeah, I think.
Well, is that tone color?
Yeah. I think
that's a little more tone color than melody, harmony, and rhythm, you'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I could go off on these. Like, it's like pitch is holding a frequency constant. La. It's a kind of, it's like unit. It's like we just get that one cycle going. Maybe rhythmic, periodic rhythms. It's this kind of concept. Timbre, tone color is something kind of different. It's like, it's materiality. It's something about how the objects resonate or ring or don't. So timbre really reflects our energy that we put into objects. So like, if you think of like in a classical ballet, there's a sense of you want it to be effortless, not see the effort. And maybe with sort of classical music, it's Mozart, it should be effortless. In some ways, I'm interested in, and a lot of other, I'd say, contemporary composers, his works, I kind of go along with. It's in that how do you hear that effort? You don't want it to be as if the body doesn't exist, or some just this effortless activity. You want to feel the weight, and you want to hear the weight, and so that's going to manifest through timbre, through tone color. That really brings out, it's like an index of that energy and that material conditions.
Really good with words there, dude, because that's like my friend and I discuss guitarists. Are they a chops player or a feel player?
Yeah.
And Yngwie can play like Paganini, and Paganini probably had a lot of feeling, and Yngwie can have a lot of feeling, but in the long run we go, now they're chops, and it doesn't mean one's better than the other, but it's like, how do you integrate the two?
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I love this thing, ballet is effortless. That's what you want to see in the, it's all these kids on YouTube. They're amazing. And it's like, you want to see one that's effortless. And that there's this one Russian kid playing guitar, and he's just like effortless. And it's like, how does, but it's all like that, too many notes, but it's effortless, So that was a great word you taught me. My friend says the 3 T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. So technique, you learn how to do it. Theory, the structure. How does one acquire taste?
By going to a lot of live music and talking, and going to the after party and talking with musicians. many, repeat.
That is good. McLuhan said song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical tastes is ultimately connected to language difference. Any comment?
I think there's definitely truth in that, and but it doesn't necessarily just need to be broad cultural different, formations. Certainly, like individuals, our own relationship to our language. I think I feel like I can have a very energetic thinking and multilinear thinking, and I think that comes out in my music and the way I try to collage, my interest in collage and in certain kind of energy levels. So, and I think if someone who has a more constructed, balanced, regular thinking process, I think their music will reflect that, probably.
What's more fundamental, language or music?
Ooh. Wow. Oh, man. I guess it just depends on where you are, where you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
An instrumental composition?
Yeah, an instrumental piece or song that makes you laugh.
Well, I actually, just what comes to mind was actually just a recording session last night. So that was with some improvisers, Atlanta Improviser Orchestra, and it just it's funny because actually during the moment it was intense. We were prompted. We had a wonderful pianist, cellist pianist, Doc Calico, who was giving some great words of wisdom and kind of guiding us through as we were doing one set. And he was like, all right, I want us just everyone, all right, we've been doing these long, slow, that's great. But now I want everyone to pull out everything you got. I want virtuosic. We're in the TikTok age, to give it everything. And then 10 seconds later, you're doing something different. And then he just like sat down and went going, and it was on edge. But now, and so it wasn't humorous in the moment, but I think, but now it gives me, I get it.
That's beautiful. Because I always want people to say monk. In Thelonious Monk said there are no wrong notes. Any comment?
Yeah. Right. I think that everything you do as a musician, everything you do, it just is who you are there at that moment. And we all have characteristics, strengths, weaknesses, insights, anything any musician, anyone, or I don't want to say musician, anyone does that's music is going to express them. So there are no wrong notes. There's just everyone figuring things out and trying things out.
Monk also said, silence is the loudest sound in the universe. Miles talks about the space between notes. And George Clinton nailed it. He said, funk is the absence of. How do you know when not to play? How, like last night, he says, okay, go balls out. How did you know, to integrate silence there or a pause? I mean,
how? Yeah, it's an improvisation. Getting back to it's like the ethics. Sometimes it's an ethical question. It's like it can feel like that. It's like, am I playing too much, or am I not playing enough? And it's always tricky because you could be playing too much, but that could be awesome. It could be really giving everyone the energy, and you might not even know until after you've started or gotten into it. So I think you get to listening, and are you listening to everyone, and are you taking risks and speaking, but are you also aware of other people and trying to bring them in and create space? So I think it's sometimes we have to remind ourselves, and maybe even artificially, to take time. Actually, what Doc Calico said last night when he gave us instruction, he said, play something and then switch instruments, because in the time it takes you to change instruments, you're gonna put it down, get it up, that's going to create some space, and you're going to come back in a new, you'll have done an idea, and you'll take some time, check in where you're at. And even if you only had one instrument, so like in the recording, you'd hear us just like put down my violin and think, maybe stand up, wait, pick it up. So I think it can be something that you have to develop a practice around.
Very wise. Just the simple act of changing the instrument is there. That's how do you integrate silence? Change instruments in the middle. In the middle, you don't have a choice because you have ESP, Adam. Because this is the next question. The only way you can sell a concert, this is Leonard Cohen, is if you put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
I agree. I think that's a well put. My creative process, I think these days it's shifted a little bit. And I think in the past, when I was focused on composing like stuff for chamber ensembles, I was thinking about that performance space as this risky space. Now, because my projects are more a lot or sound installation or media, and it's a little more removed. So I think I'm actually still trying to struggle. Let me be a little more concrete. Like in this project, the Kiva and I do Fake Radio Lab. There's where we're sort of doing a sound collage mishmash that's sort of parodying various tropes that are in radiophonic genres, NPR shows and other kind of such genres. There's a question of like, what do we say? What can we say? So we're actually supposed to be talking about something. So there's everyone who gets on air is like risky. I mean, I even a lot of the people I might want to make fun of or think of as like horrible people in terms of how they kind of propagandize, they actually get on air and have to be live and say stuff. Now, I think they probably develop it becomes its own world, and I'm thinking of like Rush Limbaugh or whoever, I don't know what it becomes if you do that full time, but it is risky to do that. So I think so that's one project. I think a lot of the projects, the risk is in moving into a kind of space where I don't know I did a project in a big city square using their main PA system and trying to get sounds from the city and then kind of reflect them back into the square. And there was a question about feedback, and it's not like a project that I could practice at home because it literally took place in a big city square. So, and I did try practicing it actually at someone's house. We put some big PAs outside, and I tried to get some street noise and then process the audio. So that was like technically kind of risky. But the sad thing I feel like in that one, it's like, as if it doesn't work. I mean, what kind of risk are we talking about? It just becomes kind of a background, no one notices it, so finding the risks that are like confronting. I think ultimately are you confronting people or engaging them in a way that makes them question what they think or discover something. I think that's the kind of risk I'd like to be engaged in.
Yeah, you did it twice in a row now, or this is your second time. You anticipated the next main word in the next question, struggle. But first, I got to tell you, we're on live TV worldwide right now.
Yeah, I know.
It just seems like we're sitting in a room talking. And so, it's not like 50s New York live TV with clunky cameras. It's like, boom, you hit your laptop, live TV. This is Viola Spolin. If the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. So what role does struggle play in your creative process?
Yeah, like I mean, I mentioned before how I enjoy having the physical activity or like the creative process be part of the work, whether that's like the way I'm playing on violin and the way I'm making the sound, or in media pieces trying to show the kind of behind the scenes as part of the piece itself. But yeah, struggle. Yeah, I I think it's always just the struggle these days as I'm doing more of these like more diffuse kind of pieces is is how to um yeah, how to articulate how to find that new media public space. I think that's what's interesting. And I think in this project that Keith and I did at Fake Radio Lab, I think for all the flaws of the project, and there are tons, but there was a kind of we kind of like that kind of space that this like reported fake radio thing. And some of the other projects that's yeah, like what is this? How do we create an interesting new media space?
Yeah. It's like what Zappa said, how he really discovered music was sitting in the church as a teenager, watching the candles light, the flame on the candle move because of the singer's breath. And so he called it sculpting air molecules.
Wow.
So that's you're going to sculpt in a space.
Yeah.
He really became aware and then ended up making rock bands play orchestral music in hockey rinks. You know, what a life. You know, he ended up in these big concert halls, but this is Ben Ratliff. He's a music writer. He says, I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note. So me and you could hear Miles and we go, oh, that's Miles. And Ben called it fragile and pointed. So he reduced it down to 2 words. Oh, that's Coltrane, slightly undercooked and urgent. If a music writer was going to describe Adam's sound in 2 words, what 2 words would you go, he got it, or they got it?
Yeah. Yeah. It would probably be energetic and noisy.
That's good. You're fast, dude. You don't know. These musicians usually go blah, 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 blah. Energetic and noisy. You answer that. So here's Frank Zappa in 1969 in LA Free Press. And they talked about Pauline Oliveros working with sound above the audible and below, creating a mass. Frank said, not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produced a sum indifference tone, which happened to be located within the audible frequency range. By combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle you could hear. Whether or not you liked what you heard in the middle is another question. The concept is brilliant. Any comment on this idea?
Yeah, I think one thought I have is just that so often as musicians or learning, we're trying to get something or trying to do something, we think we know what that is we're trying to do, but often sometimes it's the big picture that really it matters, like and what actually the details are maybe they could be different, they could emerge, so if you have an idea of putting a wall of sound and including sub audible and and other, and you're, first of all, it probably depend on like this, a lot to do with the space you're in, like if you're listening on headphones, or is it like how those frequencies reflect on, and you obviously the theory side could be useful to understand that, but to a certain extent you're just gonna you'll be hit with that experience, and probably there's some phenomena, acoustic psychoacoustic phenomena or acoustic phenomena. It was difference tones that she was working with or exploring that was a basis for this kind of thing. But yeah, you got to imagine that it's also there's just the fact of it is going to be something on its own.
Big picture, dude. That's comprehensive awareness really well, because she did go into what's called deep listening. Pauline Oliveros is amazing. And I love you saying wall of sound, because that's kind of, I think, from Phil Spector, who used to hang out at Canner's Deli with Frank. What I would die to be in the booth next to Frank Zappa and Phil Spector and hear what they were talking about, because they're both in this big picture thing. You know, they knew it's more than just, you know, notes involved.
Well, I mean, you know, and you think about like what is that alchemy of mixing and producing and of
Huge,
you know, and yeah.
Well, you know, this great experimental artist Fred Frith, check him out if you haven't. He told me Frank was one of the first artists to use the studio as an instrument. You know, and so this is Michael Apted, the movie director. 40 years ago, I said, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? And most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it flourished in the 80s with MTV to the point where Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. So Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. So I asked this question with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Yeah, we feel like our attention span is getting shorter. I have to think that at some level we are processing and taking information or content in different, you know, it's like our practices around that are changing and
yeah.
Acceleration. It feels like acceleration. So
can humans literally multitask?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, probably I'd say no. I'd go with the shift quickly.
What was the motive of the cave artist? And let's think in this terms. It was fact in the Herzog film.
Yeah.
We haven't heard cave art, but they found a little flute, you know, in Herzog's doc on cave art where they played it for a second. But that doesn't mean that's how they sounded. So we don't have any documentation of cave music or cave dance, but we have documentation of cave art. So just in general, what do you think the motive of the cave artists, the cave musicians, the cave dancers was?
I want to like go completely imaginative, speculative without any basis. I think that would be maybe more fun. I don't, you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, to I don't know, to send love messages to the neighboring.
Send love message. Well, that's, you know, who did it good was the drummer for the Dead, Mickey Hart, said that's the function of music when it first started, was to hit the logs and say, hey, they're coming to, you know. And then I love this one guy. I said, what's the function, what's the motive of cave artists? He said, to keep people in the cave.
Yeah.
Like, come over to my place. I got some grapes and crackers and cheese, and we can hang out.
We should, yeah, bring back the cave art.
Yeah, well, that was good. You said you just wanted to believe it, because it doesn't matter what the anthropologists have studied and theorized. It's important. But my question is, what's your hunch why they did this?
And like, what is it that we kind of fantasy imagine when we look at, like, what does the cave art mean to us now?
And then what does it
way?
Yeah, does it really matter? Because aren't we doing the same thing as they? You know, oh, it was because they, you know, it's like, when did it get commercial?
Yeah.
You know, and become a product. It could have been a product from day one. They go, man, if I hit this, like, I'll get love and they'll bring me an apple. So we don't know if that is the human tendency, like sort of conditional. I'm going to, you know, but we want to believe as artists, like, oh, my art is pure and I'm doing it from my heart. You know, like Sam Johnson says, anybody but a blockhead writes for other than getting money. you know. But what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Man, I guess conviction.
You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
I want to say luck, but not just in the sense that I can't think back to my story without thinking in concrete terms of people and places and spaces I've been to or went to, and whether was it going abroad and living in Paris, is that luck? I mean, in some ways, there's a lot of ways it could be described as luck, So yeah, I think not luck, but just but circumstance and but that doesn't, oh, man, that doesn't fully, yeah, was it luck, ambition,
and skill? Yeah.
Yeah, more. Oh man, more ambition than skill. No, I mean, I think, okay, I think for me, it's been where it's happened is just when there's things are, I'm passionate, the passion that, leads you to go somewhere, to go move somewhere. And yeah,
no, that's good. Yeah, it's good. These lines, like, just because I offer those three, people sometimes say, well, it's none of those three. It's persistence, or it's compulsion, or it's purpose, or it's necessity. So a poet said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Ooh. I want to say like TikTok videos, but I don't actually watch it.
That is good.
I feel like that's what it feels like.
That's good. Well, that's what I'm after. What it feels like. TikTok videos is very good. Okay. Two of my film heroes say their mantras: ignore yourself. There's no self-expression. In fact, Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making, music making more self-expression, or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
The self is a product of those and produces them. I think I start with I feel like it's a lot about the context that you're in, and so I guess I'd say it's that it's like it's like jigsaw puzzle designer. I'm just looking around this room and I'm seeing all these objects, and I think I think you're putting together pieces that are in front of you. So yeah.
Check out, if you've never heard of Negative Land, the guy from that band, amazing collage band, the greatest collage band ever, actually. The guy, I asked him that question and he gave a good example. He said Missy Elliott learned how to sing from car alarms.
Yeah.
Most people like, I learned how to sing in the church. She said, I learned how to sing from car alarms.
Yeah. Do you invent, or do you discover, or do you you encounter? So
can art making be egoless?
Yes, I think so.
Tell me. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I going to that antenna metaphor you gave before, I think of course there's some sense in which it's always been related to you and how you're in yourself and your own ideas, but yeah.
Well, it's Bob Dylan said, I'm just a radio, and I'm a radio antenna is just coming through me, So tell me one major element of your Adamness, your creativeness, that's changed, in one major element that's stayed the same in the years you've been doing this.
Well, so I'd say media. So thinking of myself as a media artist in some way. So I for a long time I did acoustic music, chamber music, and studied some electronic music. But it was I remember exactly what it was when Ross Carr, who's a percussionist and director of a music ensemble, but also did an MFA in film, taught several of us at NYU, or was doing my PhD, how to video document our concerts, and kind of geared us up. And that way of encountering what I was doing, just shooting video and editing it, changed everything I thought about music. And so I think there was this space of this beautiful acoustic space of music, which I love, where you're in this space of other people live, and that's magical. But since then, I feel like I'm definitely struggling, or productively, hopefully, with this thinking of music as a media art. And
really good. I would change it, like MA, media artist. That's beautiful. I would highly recommend too. There's a short film that Zappa made called G-Spot Tornado, and you can find it on YouTube. And then his feature film 200 Motels. It's the most non-cliche rock film ever made, and it's amazing, because then he went and made Baby Snakes, which is like a kind of more typical rock film. But 200 Motels is a masterpiece in so many ways, to the point that New York Times called him the Orson Welles of rock.
Great. That's nice.
But most people get, they can, just knowing you're a little into experimental and you're kind of going into this film sensibility, just check it out. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Yeah, I would say maybe it goes to the wrong note idea. There's no such thing as a wrong note. I think in developing as an improviser, especially playing in a very eclectic ensemble where people come in with very different skills. There's always going to be people who have skill sets that you don't have, or have language that you don't have. So I think embracing my own technique on violin, and I'm no Paganini, so I'm not gonna do these virtuosic runs up and down the instrument, but that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of space for I'll say I treat my violin as a sound design instrument.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's how I listen to it. So I think, that identifying, it's not weaknesses, but your peculiarities.
That's it. There's three things there. One is Cocteau said, the first piece you make, and your parents and your friends and your teacher give you criticism, take that criticism and exploit it for the rest of your career.
Great. Go ahead.
That is a good one. And then, have you ever heard the Shags? You got to look up the Shags, dude. They're the worst band in the history of the world. But they are it's unbelievable what they did. I won't tell you anymore. Just give them, Who Are Parents? Just look up one song, Who Are Parents by the Shags. I asked for 90 minutes. We're almost there. Can you go a little longer?
Go for it.
Okay. What can you go 10, 20, or 30 more minutes?
let's do 30. Let's keep
Okay,
going.
good,
I'll
good.
adjust the seat.
Adam, this is a
Is
real
this like a lightning round now, or that was the lightning round? Now we can do the deep.
When I interviewed George Clinton with all these questions, I says, "Oh, now I'm going to ask you some playful questions," and he goes,
no.
"I've been being playful all along." I says, "That was so cool." No, it's all about play. Oh, Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Ooh, I guess I wouldn't think of it in terms of the way we usually think about impossible, as in, I don't know, something that doesn't exist or couldn't exist. Um, I think, it's just weird. It's also, I think a lot for me of what I think depends on where I'm living, who I'm around. Am I living by myself? Am I teaching? Am I traveling? And what's a good one that has come up? I mean, I feel like more and more I get confused, and the things that, it's sort of classic, the things that felt more sharp and clear at a young age become much more complicated, it feels to me, at this age. So yeah, possibilities. I mean, I start thinking about politics and what is possible, and and how just from month to month, year to year, everything inverts and flips on and turns into what I could not have imagined. So sorry, so took that a slightly different direction.
No, that's all right. You did good. In fact, you said politics. I'll just ask you this question.
Yeah.
Utah Phillips, who's a great folk singer, labor activist, said anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Well, what are the rules? Who are the rules for? If they're rules for yourself, you could say you're entitled to. If they're the rules of the game, I guess it's whoever's playing the game. So we have to make the rules. One would imagine you got to make the rules. You got to agree upon the rules. Whoever's playing the game.
Yeah. And you talked about teaching. McLuhan said this in 57. It's misleading to suppose there's any basic difference between education and entertainment. It's always been true that whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So it's an interesting little twist. I'm just curious your thoughts on being a teacher, and that whatever pleases, what does pleasing mean, teaches, and what does more effectively mean?
Yeah. So well, okay. I'll think about teaching about recording technology, and a line that I like to use, not original, just is that recording technology is time travel. With recording technology, you can have a duet with the dead, and this has been done. And that's a kind of thought that can be kind of provocative and fun for undergraduate students, and can get them engaged, and try to get them to think about what's more to recording technology than what they might have imagined. And so that, I think, in that sense, I mean, when we're doing activities, when we're having fun, when we're engaged, having a good conversation, that can be a form of entertainment. So I think there is some of that of the show, of a teacher, putting on a show, but of course the real education is probably happening by the student themselves, hanging out with their friends, or doing their work. So I think there's like one of my old composition professors used to say, composition lessons are basically like, what do you teach? You're basically just hanging out with another musician for an hour once a week. Like you're just getting to know another musician and like shooting the shit and talking about music. And I think that is actually a lot of it is this kind of demonstration, like that kind of teaching of just demonstrating that it's kind of okay to be this kind of person or this kind of to engage the world these kind of ways and ask these kind of questions. And that I don't think of as necessarily entertainment. So I think there's a lot in the repertoire, hopefully, for teaching, and maybe it depends on the size of your audience and what kind of magic what you want to play but you are engaged with other people and you're trying to make the time meaningful. So
well, it's interesting, Adam, you used the word play there a couple times, because we play music. You don't go, let's go work music. But when you're a recording engineer, I'm going to go to work now. You don't go, I'm going to go play with these knobs. You're working, but playing music is an interest. I mean, there's a lot to it, because if you're a musician, a working musician in New York, it's work. You're looking to play at a Broadway show or a club gig or whatever. But you said that word, talking with the dead. Is that what you said?
Duet with the dead.
Yeah. What was the verb? Talking or
duet?
Oh, a duet.
Duet with the dead. Do a duet. Yeah.
So I'm researching archiving, and the basic question is archiving more innate or more invented? And let me just set it up. Archive etymologically comes from the word in 1400s to keep safe, free from harm. And then in 1600s, it becomes what we know it as, records preserved as evidence. And then there's this Eastern philosophy that goes, be here now, live in the moment. In fact, Wyndham Lewis nailed it. He says, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. And so, why did the Egyptians put stuff in their coffin? Because is there some innate need to preserve stuff? Because you're in a profession that the magic of music, in my opinion, is it's a live act. We ruined it when we started recording it, but I know we didn't ruin it. We changed it. So this sense because you got that buzz last night. But Tom Waits says the best music doesn't want to be recorded. But if you hide the microphone, you might get a grade.
40 years from then,
it's like
that tape that somebody made.
Right. So your idea, first of all, is archiving more innate or more invented?
I think it's I think it's kind of more, I guess, innate. Like it's well, okay. I was actually in LA about a couple months ago or so at UCLA at their archives to work on this project. It's a collaboration with a colleague there, a friend there who's Jessica Schwartz. She's a musicologist, and she played in a lot of punk bands and in LA, and that's part of her area of research. So I went to the punk archives at the music collection, and going to like an archive, like I've done some scholarship as my PhD and every archive is different, and they're really fun to go to, and a lot of them are publicly accessible. Like this one's publicly accessible, and it is just fun to look at what's the collection, just pick something and just like sift through some materials. So I pulled up these so it's this project I'm working with her. We're composing this like piece, sound installation performance around, it's called Just Pain. It's around notions of pain and chronic pain, and we're drawing upon her background of punk music and my background of contemporary classical and experimental. And we're coming up with a score, and it's going to take the form of like a zine. So I wanted to look at some materials in the collection to get some inspiration, and I came across I mean, so part of the thing is there's intentions between archiving, but then experience in archiving, part of it is it's like you never know what you're going to find. And what I found was it's like build your own fucking life or something like that. It was a zine put out, and all it is in like the 80s into the 90s, all it was state by state and country by country, a listing of gig options, record labels, and then like other crash pads, and you'd get like notes like, yeah, hey, I've got like a room, like any punkers happy, like I make some good, eggs, and you're welcome to crash. And it was really fascinating to see just a ton of DIY energy and just like all sorts of communication going on, and and just that kind of collective, the scene. It was really cool. So okay, so just because that's on my mind, and so how do we, we have these memories, we want to hold on to them and look at them now it's insane now, because even from like a technological perspective, you feel like YouTube and the internet, or what is it, archive.org, archiving the whole internet. Like, what does that even mean? And they're all giving each, you can roll back the internet, and then like how much data is that, and where does it get stored? So clearly we have this archival desire, and even our own old laptops and our own photos from childhood, and so the whole, so sentimental value. There's definitely a value. The archives, encountering an archive, we're so caught up in the present, so it is nice to be in a very direct way, confronted with something that feels present but is past.
Yeah, it's like very well put. It's like Duet with the Dead.
Yeah,
I mean, someone just put up a Frank Zappa AI voice to an article that he wrote in 70. And it's creepy to a point, but in another way, it's amazing, because they caught it. They didn't catch it perfectly, but it's like, it's still in like, so this is where we're leading. But see, digital world might not last. Magnetic tape might last. Books last.
Yeah.
And that's how I deal with my own archive. I've been interviewing for 40 years, and I have these tapes on audio cassette.
Yes.
Like, I got a tape of driving Norman Zamchek to the airport, and I'm asking him these stupid questions, and I got that tape. Now that can be digitized, and they say, the archivists say, one main thing: don't throw out your master. Yeah. But then where are you going to store it? So I got lucky. Wow. Mine's in an archive, but they go, well, now that it's online, well, what if they turn off the internet someday?
Yeah, that was that point. I mean, I didn't get into music technology until really, as a practitioner, until like 2005. So you've experienced that succession, of media. I mean, of course, I did with CDs and all that, that was a point. We had a music librarian at NYU who came to a conference, and he had two objects. He had a CD, and he had a 14th century, manuscript, music manuscript. He's like, which of these do you think will be around in another, 500 years? He's like, I think the manuscript is more likely to be accessible, able to be read, not corrupted. So
I dumpster dove last week a book that's from 1902, and it's actually a magazine, and it's got an ad. I wish I could show it to you right now, for a record player from 1902, and it's mint. And it's like, I'm gonna find a thumb drive, and and it's gonna be 100 years old. You won't be able to play it.
And the right offering.
But I can look at it, and I can touch it, and I can see it. It's pretty amazing what paper does. So bringing up punk, that's great. Anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
when it's articulated and released in a thoughtful way.
Yeah. There's a line that goes, "You create what you resist." Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into, "You are what you hate." James Joyce said, "It's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve."
Hmm.
And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, "Thank God I'm an atheist."
Mm-hmm.
So how would you respond to this? I'm not saying you, Adam, but one creates what one resists. You create what you resist. What's your thoughts on that line?
Because it always goes back to some of what we were talking about, like you don't create in a vacuum, and we are very much embedded in very particular spaces and places and ground beneath us, that has history. And so you resist, we think of like this enemy thing, but there's also the violin, like, well, is it, I don't get to just make any sound I want, right? So I think it gets back to that tool thing, what I guess if you talk about resistance, though, it's the way you're talking about, it's a little more about values or about cultural identities, perhaps, and and so, but maybe that's kind of, that's also could be related. Yeah, I think that's the landscape. I mean, these days, I feel this media kind of YouTube, all the fake news, everything, and cybernetics and artificial intelligence, clearly, that is, for me, very confusing and very present. So I don't know. Yeah. And resist. I think resist is, resist can mean you don't allow it to determine you. And yeah.
It's good. How do you find peace of mind?
Sometimes hiking.
It's good.
Hiking.
Here's 5 quick Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head in a couple words. 1, who started it all?
God.
Are we going to make it?
Yes, if we means the whole universe, with or without humans.
Very good. 3, where do we put it?
In the wrong spot.
Who's cleaning it up?
Me tomorrow.
It's really good. Those last 2 answers were amazing. In the wrong spot. No one ever says that. In me, they're always like, I actually had a guy once say, "My maid," and I'm like, "Ay." 5th question from Alan Watts. Is it serious?
Yes. Very serious.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Change schools. No.
That's good. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll? Over or under?
Over, I think. Yeah.
If a publisher was to release
that's assuming you've taken the time to actually put it on the roll, and it's not just kind of stacked on the side.
Well, the patent picture of the toilet paper has it going over.
Okay.
But there are people who 80 to 90% people say over, but there are people who say under, and they have their reasons.
Could it be a function of height? I don't know.
I never got the height thing. It's usually like, well, you don't want it to rub against the wall, or cats can do it easier that way. There, you get all kinds. I mean, it's a stupid question, but when I used to do these interviews in public, the audience would really finally kind of sigh in relief, like, wow, finally a question I could answer. They're like, these are too heady or something. I mean, they're not too heady. You've done great, Adam. It's been fun, right? You're just having fun.
Absolutely. Bring it
If
on.
if a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Oh, uh, Dazed and Confused.
Oh, that's good. And they want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Ooh, unscented.
Unscented. Very good. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Statue in my honor. Yeah. Some, whatever. Somewhere in the forest around Atlanta for sure. And probably, dirt.
Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Wow. Oh, good. Okay. Children.
That is an answer I got from the great artist, Mike Kelly. They're good, never had it, never want it. It's good. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Laugh.
Laugh! That's all you can do is laugh, dude. What is the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Ooh, distributed thinking, and non-hierarchical thinking.
Yeah. Well, what does that mean in just layperson's terms?
Yeah.
It sounds good, but just give me a practical example.
So I think there's the sort of modern loss of standard notions of authority and kind of fragmentation of culture. So they're just, even in composition, music composition, which was up until maybe 40 years ago, was pretty kind of hierarchical field. And obviously I don't mean hierarchies are important often, and I don't think we can have a totally non-hierarchical society, but the way the practices have just totally opened up and been, what was once a more narrow defined field of composition, classical composition, is much more complicated and mixed up. And there's so much, even I'll say, I spent 15 years in New York, which was amazing. And now being in Atlanta for 7 years, there's so many great musicians here, and just finding all these spaces that have their own, communities and are interconnected in complex ways. So that is, I think that can be inspiring. That is inspiring.
You're talking, is it a little about the gatekeepers? Yeah. The authority and gatekeepers. That's cool. What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
Oh, wow. I think I'm fascinated by aging.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say aging, but getting older.
Yeah.
And just how we experience, how time is passing, and how we locate ourselves, and just how it changes. And that I find, to now have experienced decades. I remember when I was younger, say 19 or so, you hear about the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, and then now I have now lived through decades. And so I know this is not like a new thing. This is just something everybody experiences. So I don't, this arc that we're on, it's like, what is the shape of that arc? And it's, I mean, is it an arc? You know, is it, you know, what I'm amazed by this idea of like, if we think of a narrative or a trajectory, how every time you're on it, it kind of, the axis changes, and it just keeps going. So I guess I don't know what the arc is. And
Yeah. What is the shape of the arc of time is really a great question, Adam. And it begs two things. You know, both James Joyce and Zappa said all times are happening now, that all at onceness. But no, we started 1 hour and 55 minutes ago. There's time here, you know, according to this. Yeah, all times are happening now. But bringing up the word narrative was beautiful. Again, your ESP is astounding. Hollis Frampton, a great experimental filmmaker, said narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. Can you forget to die?
See, I haven't gotten that far. Yeah. Oh, that thinking about death is, that we come back to and never know. I don't know. Yeah, I think I suppose you can.
Yeah.
That
Well,
sounds
it's interesting.
beautiful.
It's a perplexing question. I've only asked it in the last couple of years, and people that aren't sure whether they should take it metaphorically or literally. They they go, I can forget that I have to die, but I didn't say that. I'm just saying, can you forget to die? So there's, you know, it's just. Now, how has music shaped your behavior? You've really been involved in it for many years. Composition, music, how's it shaped your behavior?
Well, you know, at a university, it's sometimes kind of amazes me that they let artists into the universities. And you know, and we always have these discussions like, what is research? What is why do we performers, the pianists, how do they define their work as research? You know, and composers, is it research? So part of me is like, it's pretty just amazing that like there can be a space for artists, composers, in these like ivory towers. So I think, but so why I was thinking about that, I like sometimes, I mean, I love the researchers and scholars, but I love that what we do is like, has in some ways that's all super interesting, but like, I can play music, I can make music, and it's just this thing that's this fascinating, rich experience, and different, and a riskiness of different kinds depending on how we do it. And if anything, I do want to bring that. I like to try to bring that energy and trust that energy in contexts where that may not be the kind of energy that is generally, you know, like part of what's being discussed. Or the framework.
Yeah. It's like what you described to me, or what I felt from what you just said there, was, you know, we can get away with murder being musicians. I mean, we can do, the art is the last bastion for freedom, really. And Auden, the poet, said that the mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates or pacifies us. It could just put us in a trance and like chill out, or it could make you do something. And could you believe, you know, Igor Stravinsky gave lectures on how music doesn't mean anything. So, you know, think of all the money you invest in the academics of music and recording, and, you know, Taylor Swift's a Brazilianaire, and this is like a huge industry. But, you know, it was Dinah Shore. Look this one up. Dinah Shore had Frank Zappa on, and she goes, oh, no, I got to ask you this. What do you think of the music business? And he goes, well, the important word is business. That's all they care about. They don't care about music. But we know they do care about music. And we can, in the midst of all that mechanics of money, care about music, and that's the essence of it all, is this amazing phenomenon where we can be free, and really it doesn't mean anything. We can think it means something.
Yeah, and I think of this various sorts of formalities that we have, which certainly exist in music also, but where I go back to that sense of play, that keeping that spirit alive and bringing it in, and not succumbing to the other sorts of pressures. I think to sort of trust that ability, or that space of freedom and playfulness, and that
we had a
goal.
group on the boardwalk, me and my friend, we were called Puke and Liar, and we would play one song, Earache My Eye by Cheech and Chong, over and over. It was horrible. And people would walk by and they like, and then they'd finally get it. Well, it's sort of a joke. And then on our tip jar, it says, do not put any money in here.
Didn't know what to make of it, but they probably remembered it.
But then we got hit by a potato, so we stopped playing.
That is, I have not met many artists who've actually been hit by a or whatever potato is.
This was like from a condo on the boardwalk. Someone threw a potato at us. So here's two more and we're out of here. Thank you, Adam. This is Thornton Wilder. He said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell the secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 2 hours. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Yeah, I would go with the play. I think it's just the ability to look at something, in a new way. Now I'm going to give some cliches. That moment of discovery, of excitement, of this can be, this is something else, and it's something that I didn't know it could be, and that has something to it, and I can share that. I think that's probably the center line.
Yeah, I love it because you said the instinct of life and love was the best thing for a human being. It goes back to that, like seeing new ways with new eyes. Really good, Adam. And what gives you the most optimism?
I mean, it's got to be other people. And every time, everyone, we're all really, really different from each other, and I mean, interestingly, in interesting ways, we're so distinctly who we are. And I when you have a chance to be with other people who can manifest that spirit, and I feel like you, in a way of connection, their own individual difference, but then also to share that with you. And I felt like that happened a lot at this event, this recording session last night. But I also, we continually encounter that at every level, just day to day with the people I met. I think also of some of my travels in the past when I went to different countries in like Israel and Palestine, and just meeting amazing people. So basic human decency and connection, that is still there.
Yeah. It gives me a lot of optimism. We had a lot of connection here and commonality, but I wanted to bring up, do you know this music teacher in Paris, Nadia Boulanger.
Yes, very famous.
Yeah. So she said this great line to Quincy Jones: "Your music can never be more or less than you are as a human being."
Yeah,
It's really beautiful.
that's it.
My friend played a Zappa track for her on the piano. I mean, he
Wow.
played a Zappa composition on the piano for her, and she hated rock music, and she went, "That is good," you know. But I mean,
It's the
it's
media.
it's been really fun spending this time with you, and it's like the first question, what is the best thing for a human being? Wilhelm Reich said, another human being. And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life, and he said other people. And so it's really been a pleasure spending this time with another person, especially because it was you, Adam. Thank you so much, man.
My pleasure. I appreciate you hosting this and being the presence that you are, and engaging all sorts of artists and thinkers. And so thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Adam. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button now, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever, dude.
Sounds good.
See you later. Thanks, Adam.